Welcome back. AC lesson number 14. Gauge readings. Normal and abnormal gauge readings. Let's start with normal. What is normal? Well, according to the Proto-Man, the following is normal. At the top, that's what it says. Normally functioning AC system. Remember, the 4 ingredients to normal. Can you fill in the blanks? The correct amount of blank. Blank hitting on all cylinders. Good cooling of the blank. And something that starts with a C. You remember? These are the 4 ingredients to be normal. Fill in the blanks. I hope you did well. The correct amount of refrigerant. Compressor hitting on all cylinders. And good cooling of the condenser. Circulation of the refrigerant. All of these ingredients are just as important as the first one, the second one, and the third one. If any of the ingredients are off, it's going to affect the performance of the cooling. Back to normal. It says it. Normally functioning AC system. Great. What is this normal? I'm asking you, is this normal? No. And I hope you remember why. We're special here in Texas. Extreme severe heat. Look at the pointers. The blue one. Can we round off that number 29 to a 30? On the red, can we round that number off to 200? So yes, we're going to round off the 2 numbers. The blue number is 30 and the red number is 200. Let's look at this chart. Some of you might remember that these pressures are affected by temperature. We'll start with the blue one. The blue one is between 25 and 35, puts us right at 30. That's what this one is saying. On the red, we're off. You see the red arrow? It's only saying 155. If we try to get closer to 200, you see the arrows now? Let's go with the red. The red arrow is pointing to a pressure on the high side of approximately 200. But on the blue, you see what's going on? It's not 30 anymore. In fact, if you rounded it off, it's like 45. I call it split the difference. Here, we're trying to get close to what Proto-Man says is normal. On this chart, the blue arrow is indicating close enough to 30. The red arrow, well, we're stretching it a little bit, but it's close enough to 200. But look at the yellow arrow. That's not Corpus. That's Colorado. You don't even need air conditioning when it's 75 degrees out there, right? Each vehicle is different. Each specification is different. Throw in some extreme operating heat conditions, la canicula, the dog days of summer. And then you have normal. So what's normal? Good luck around here. Here's some more tables. And let me try to simplify it. Here on the yellow arrow, that's where we are right now. In the summertime, we're easily between 90 degrees and 100. Yes, the humidity makes it more difficult to cool us down. Yes, I'm pointing to the right one. It's always high humidity in the summertime. The yellow arrow, we're always hot. On the green arrow, we're almost always humid. The blue, I'll keep for the low side. The blue says about 35, 37 PSI. And on the red, we have some more pressure readings. Here's some more readings. Let's see if we can do anything with these. This is one reading for one particular vehicle. This is another reading for another vehicle. They're not identical. Each vehicle is different, but we have to throw in ambient temperature. The yellow arrow, close enough. The green arrow, absolutely. On the blue, 50 could be normal. This thing about normal and abnormal can get a little tricky. Let's go on. There's no question about it. On the bottom, temperature. Okay. The temperature affects the pressure. The higher the temperature, the higher the pressure. I'm going to show you these three different gauge readings. I'm going to start with what's called normal, another normal. Now, I just got this off the internet, copy and paste, but let's take a good look at it. Right there, under the blue gauge, under the red gauge, everything says normal. This represents a normal working air conditioning system. If we now look at the blue pointer, can we look at the blue pointer? Sure looks like 30 to me. The red pointer, yes, you'll have to be able to read this. Who can tell where we are? We're at 175 psi. This is normal. That's what it says. Below the blue, below the red, everything's normal. Here, let's look first below the red. Right away, it says, well, that's too high. Can you read the number? We're on the inner scale, that's the PSI. The outer scale is the metric unit. We're at 425. That sure seems high. On the blue, they can't make up their mind. Is it high or is it normal? If we read the blue, it's every bit of 50. You see this? Now look at it. I did not do a switcheroo. 400 on the red. 425 is what? Normal if the ambient temperature is what? Very high. Believe it. Have you figured it out? Our pressures change with temperature, especially with extreme severe heat. Anything above 90 degrees is considered extreme severe heat. Let's look at another one. Below the red, it says low. Below the blue, they can't make up their mind. Why can't they make up their mind? Because we haven't plugged in the ambient temperature. Is it normal? Is it low? I'm not doing a switcheroo. Look at it again. On the red, look at it. That's 75. That's 75 psi. If I was measuring red pressure here in the summertime, that thing's half empty. But look what it says. It's normal if the ambient temperature is what? Low. It goes both ways. When the temperature is extremely hot, the pressure goes up. When the ambient temperature is extremely low, the pressures go down. More about normal, you remember? These are the four ingredients to make normal. You should memorize them. When we have all four ingredients, the correct amount, it's nice and cold. Of course, you can't read that, and I don't need you to read it. I'll explain at the top. It says normal. Now, I hope you can count 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. We're going to go over 9 abnormal readings. Look at those. Those are crazy. Look at all those readings. It almost makes me dizzy to look at all those numbers. But let's go on. Our first most common abnormal reading, in my opinion, is this one, starting at the top. Low R134 charge. The system is low on refrigerant. That's what the title says. Above the blue gauge, it's low. Above the red gauge, it's low. Everything is indicating low. Over here, we have a couple of more symptoms on the blue arrow. There's other things to look at. Sight glass. There it is, a sight glass. I almost stopped mentioning these because they were gone, but I am so glad they're coming back. I haven't seen it. Yes, I have. I did see it. Some of the newer vehicles on the liquid line now have a sight glass. You see that little round glass on top of that drying element? That's a sight glass. We used to use the sight glass all the time. I couldn't understand why they took it away. The sight glass was the easiest way not only to tell that the system was low, but to hit your target charge. As you were adding the refrigerant, you would look at that glass. When the glass was white, that meant it was low. As the charge got to a normal level, the white would turn to clear. Why is it low? Who remembers? Is the refrigerant like gasoline? It gets used up and you got to keep adding it every year? No. Why is it low? Because of leaks, leaks, and more leaks. Who doesn't believe it yet? 80% of the time, the problem is the system has a leak. What leaks? Everything. Compressors leak, connections leak, evaporators leak, condensers leak, fittings leak, hoses leak, everything leaks. What part doesn't leak? Everything leaks. Any questions about low on Freon? That's our first abnormal gauge reading. The next one, yes, we start to get a little bit more involved. At the top, the blue arrows, compressor malfunction. There's something wrong with the compressor. Above the blue gauge, the blue's too high, the red's too low. You see them over here. What's wrong with it? Well, they're telling us that we have an internal compressor leak or it's mechanically broken. Who remembers what goes wrong with the compressors? Well, they're like an engine and they wear out. We have internal leakage here. Here, the ring has decided to leave the groove. Who remembers why the Teflon rings decide to leave the groove? Because they're overheated and they're melting. This particular image shows plenty of oil on the moving parts compared to this one. This one doesn't have any oil, and it's easy to understand why they wear out. They're like engines. That's not going to go away. They're still the same. They're going to wear out because they don't have oil. They're going to wear out because they overheat, or they're going to wear out because of a combination. Yes, that's an AC compressor off a vehicle. What a mess. Let's go on. It gets a little more tricky. Here, insufficient cooling of the condenser, or this is two things. We're covering two things. Insufficient cooling of condenser is one problem, or refrigerant overcharge is another problem. Now, above the gauges, where are they? Let's keep it simple. Above both gauges, it says high. The pressures are high. And at this point, there's two things that'll make both pressures too high. One is the condenser is not getting cooled very well. It's not sort of kind of nice. It's an essential part of the process. We have to remove heat from the refrigerant. It's part of the process. You should have an idea why. Well, condensers get dirty. Nobody cleans them except me. Cooling fans, guaranteed they're going to wear out. Because if you know, inside all DC motors are the brushless. These guys are going to stop working. And now the air conditioning is going to be affected and the pressures go too high. Here's a wiring diagram. You can have problems with the relay and the protection and some of the switches. Other problems that can cause insufficient cooling of the condenser is that the fan clutch is slipping. These guys don't last forever. They might be spinning, but they're not spinning fast enough. When the engine is hot and you're in stop and go driving, these fan clutches should hardly slip. The only time they're supposed to slip is when you're going down the interstate, 75 miles an hour. You have a ton of ram air. The engine compartment, the passenger compartment is full. That's why we slip it. Who knows why we slip the clutch? There's a couple of answers. One is to improve fuel mileage. Another one is to quiet the operation. These guys don't last forever. Dirty condensers, damaged condensers, dirty condensers. It's the same thing. Whether you're working on a house or a car, this is an important part of the process. Guess what happens when the pressure, guess what happens to the pressures when the condenser does not get cooled? They go high. And now We're destroying the compressor. We're melting the rings. They're wearing out the compressor. Next one. We're still talking about the same thing. Insufficient cooling of condenser or refrigerant overcharge. How does an AC get overcharged? Overcharge means too much Freon. Well, I'll tell you how. Rookies, you gotta love them. You trust that guy? Never in a million years. Grease monkeys, they used to call us. That's not real. That's a Hollywood actor. More, put some more. The temptation is overwhelming. To put a little extra refrigerant is not going to make it cold. AC Pro is no help to the rookies. More is not better. It's very easy to overcharge. The temptation is overwhelming and the system will take it as fast as you put it in. Let's go on. Next, what does it say? It says poor refrigerant circulation. We're going over all the problems the refrigeration system can have. The first one I showed you was, well, it's low on Freon. The second one I showed you, well, the compressor is bad. The next one I showed you, either we're not cooling the condenser or somebody's put too much Freon. This is part of the ingredients. We have poor circulation. Look at the gauges. They're doing something funny. The blue gauge has gone into negative vacuum. Now, this is still a normal system. It's got the normal amount of refrigerant. We now have another problem. It's not on the top of the list, but it is on the list. You should ask yourself, and maybe you have an idea, well, what causes poor circulation? We have several answers. You've seen some images. I'm going to show you some more. We have dirty tubes, dirty valves, plugged up dryers, and restricted condensers. Of course, I have pictures there on the left, the new tube, and then the one next to it. That's not special Hollywood makeup. I'm sure that's actual failure. Who knows what that is? That's probably mostly piston material, Teflon, and that expansion valve. They get restricted. The passages are very small. It doesn't take many deposits from the compressor to plug it up. Whether it's the block style or the 90-degree style, they're going to get restricted. The guts of the compressor, whether it's metal or Teflon or whatever it is going to wind up at the tube, at the valve. What are we looking at? We're looking at a cutaway of the condenser. Why do I mention it? And I told you last time, the new condensers are high efficient. The passages are tiny. When we have catastrophic failure of the compressor, it's pretty much standard procedure to replace the condenser. We used to flush them, but nowadays the passages are so small, we don't even try. Dryers. Those are the ones that get plugged up. The one on the right, the red one, that's a dryer. I know the color's off, but there at the bottom, I want you to notice that's a screen. And what happens is when the screen gets dirty, what we're doing is identifying the major components, 4 of them, that are likely to get plugged up or restricted. The suction and the discharge and the liquid line, no, they don't get restricted. The evaporators don't get restricted. There's only 4 things that get restricted, and try and understand. Now, let's go on and split some hairs. You see the difference now? Now they're saying there's no circulation as compared to poor circulation. It's almost the same thing. Here, notice the blue gauge is in a vacuum. Whether it's poor circulation or no circulation, the gauges are going to act real funny on the blue. Sometimes we're getting down to the list here. It's possible. Moisture. You have moisture in the system. Moisture is in the air. The refrigeration system, all of them, cannot tolerate moisture. When moisture hits that expansion valve, what happens is it freezes instantly. Now, the way you can spot it is over here above the blue. The blue is on the left, the low side. Read the words like above the blue gauge. 1 minute it's normal, and the next minute it's in a vacuum. What's happening? Well, it's working, normal, normal, normal. And the moisture, it doesn't happen every single time. It's a little hard to catch it right at the instant it occurs. Sometimes the AC is working, man, it's working well, and all of a sudden it goes hot, and then it goes cold, and then it goes hot. When you have a system that 1 minute it works and the next minute it doesn't, and when I mean works, I mean cold. And when I say it doesn't, it's hot. 1 minute it's working, next minute it's not. What's wrong with it? It's possible it has moisture. We go out of our way to make sure that there's no moisture in the system, mostly by pulling a vacuum. The more technical term is evacuation. The important part, this is not the most common, but it's on the list. We're headed toward the last one, the last of the list. If you have moisture, the system works and works well, and just out of nowhere, it turns hot. So it's possible that the system has moisture in it. Starts off normal. They're really milking it here. They're trying to cover every single aspect. Air. Rookies. Here we go again. When we're charging the system, whether we're using the gauges or the station, both of us, the station and ourselves, we take steps to purge air out of our service hoses. It is possible to have too much air in the system. Air is not cold. Freon is cold. We don't want air. We don't want moisture. We want that good, juicy refrigerant. Here, our last one, or is it? Wait a minute. What am I showing you? Here, when you have air on the system, above both gauges, look at it. They're high. Now that should remind you of this one. There's two things. The condenser is not being cooled. Somebody overcharged it. You see above the gauges it says high. I'm not pulling a switcheroo. This is what happens. We actually have three. We have three things. If there's air in the system, the readings are too high. If there's insufficient cooling of the condenser, they're too high. If we have too much refrigerant, the readings are too high. Let's go on. I believe this is the last one. Something about the expansion valve improperly mounted, or here we go to things. Now, wait a minute. Again, I was right. There are four things that'll cause high, 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 high. We can have them both high if there's air in the system. We can have them both high if there's insufficient cooling of the condenser. We can have them both high if somebody put too much refrigerant. We can have them both high if the expansion valve is not mounted correctly, or we have the sensing bulb. The sensing bulb. This particular type of expansion valve needs to know what the temperature is of the evaporator. You see the yellow arrow? The sensing bulb has to be securely mounted to the outlet of the evaporator. Pictures are better. The yellow arrow on top, that's the beginning of the sensing bulb. The yellow arrow on the bottom, that's the sensing bulb. The sensing bulb has to be securely attached to the outlet of the evaporator and some of this tar tape. You see on this particular image, we have the same thing. We have the same sensing bulb, but it's under a tar tape. This looks like this might be a good place to stop. Dun, dun.